Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pitch Side Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the BSB. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates. Follow us on social media, the usernames are on screen, the links are in the description, and of course, listen on Spotify, Google Podcast, or any other platform. Welcome to the newest episode of the Pitch Side Podcast. It is a very loaded episode of the podcast, so let's start properly from the AFCON, the African Cup of Nations, and it was day 5, second round from Group A. It was with Cameroon facing Ethiopia and Burkina Faso facing Cape Verde. Cameroon officially were the first team to qualify for the round of 16 of this African Cup of Nations. No surprise, I think. After defeating Ethiopia 4-1. It was a good game, by the way, from Ethiopia. They played a really good performance, I think, particularly in the first half. They went at Cameroon, who had a tough start to the game, obviously conceding inside 4 minutes, but equalising quickly. Tottenham Ekambi scored a brace today, as well as Vincent Boubacar scored a brace. I mean, the first half ended 1-1, which looked to be a surprise. Because really Ethiopia played really well in that first half, and maybe even could have gone and took the lead in that first half against Cameroon anyway. But of course, the class of the hosts was to be shown in that second half, and they scored 3 times. And to be fair, the inexperience of Ethiopia, I mean, the 3 goals that Ethiopia conceded in the second half were pretty much copy of each other, because it was spaces in behind and through balls from the middle for Cameroon, and players finding themselves in great situations up front. So that's what happens, really. No surprise, Cameroon are the first to qualify. They beat Ethiopia 4-1 and they go through. 6 points they have in that group. Burkina Faso in the other match defeated Cape Verde 1-0. It was a sole goal from Hassan Bande early on in the first half to seal the deal for Burkina Faso. I mean, it was a different game. It was the usual AFCON games, unlike Cameroon Ethiopia, which was great. But Burkina Faso Cape Verde was a little bit timid, as per case for this AFCON. So 39 minutes in, Hassan Bande scored the only goal for the game and sealed the deal for Burkina Faso. 3 points now for Burkina Faso, as well as Cape Verde. They're going to be probably the 2 in contention for the second spot. Maybe a best third would be qualifying from that group, who knows. But in the third round, it will be Cameroon versus Cape Verde, and Burkina Faso facing Ethiopia, of course. Today, on Friday, the action continues. There's 2 groups. Group B with Senegal facing Guinea and Malawi facing Zimbabwe, while in Group C, it is Gabon versus Ghana and Morocco facing Comoros. We focus now properly on European football, but we start from what happened yesterday in the Carabao Cup semi-final, with the second semi-final. First leg, of course, after it was postponed originally because of the COVID crisis. Liverpool played Arsenal at Anfield, and it ended 0-0. Obviously, Liverpool without Salah and Mane and Naby Keita for the African Cup of Nations duties, but they still fielded a pretty strong lineup. Virgil van Dijk and Matip were there, Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, Fabinho, Henderson and Milner played, Jota and Firmino both started, which I think was expected considering the absences up front. Takumi Minamino was the third man in attack, but it definitely shone, I think, on Liverpool, showed the way things were different. Only 1 shot on target for Liverpool for the whole game. Yes, they had a lot of possession, and Arsenal in particular, I mean, they were 10 men by the end of the game. Obviously, Granit Xhaka being sent off early. They played 10 men from 24 minutes onwards, which is, I think, a testament for Arsenal. The fact that they managed to keep a clean sheet and keep Liverpool at bay with 10 men is a real testament to how strong, I think, and how improving Arsenal are. We're going to get to that when we talk about the Premier League, but I think they really improved this season, and definitely a good result for them, which will give them a lot of hope for the second leg next week at the Emirates, although I still think Liverpool may go through. But now, with this result, things could be really, really different when they play at Emirates next week. Again, the man advantage for Liverpool wasn't really exploited, and the fact that it is 1 shot on target really shows you how important Salah and Mane is for the whole organism of the club in terms of attacking. You feel a bit of a shallow edition of Liverpool anyway, but of course you'd expect him to go through. I still expect him to go through, but after what Arsenal did, keeping a clean sheet, defensively being solid for the first game, maybe, who knows, they will have a go, of course, in their own stadium, in front of their own fans. They will have a go at them, and they will bring and they will qualify and go through to the final. It was an exciting game per se, but definitely Arsenal took what they needed from it, and Liverpool would want to work more in Emirates, where if they want to qualify and if they want to go to the final to join Chelsea. From England we go to Spain, and it was the Super Cup semi-final in Spain, actually in Saudi Arabia it was played, but let's talk about the Spanish Super Cup. From Riyadh, it was Atletico Madrid versus Athletic Club in the second semi-final, and it was Athletic Club running victorious 2-1 after Atletico Madrid took the lead thanks to to Joao Felix. It was one of those goals where it hit the post and hits Unai Simon in the back, and it goes into the net. Unai Alvarez equalised for Athletic Bilbao, and Nico Williams, the brother of Iñaki Williams, managed to make it 2-1 for Athletic Club inside 81 minutes. Quickfire double for Athletic Club meant that they were victorious, and they will face Real Madrid again in a Super Cup final. They'll play a Super Cup final again. They were the winners, of course, of the last edition over Barcelona, and now they will play Real Madrid in the final on Sunday to try and win another one again for the second time. This was not the greatest of games. Also, I mean, this was much timid than the Clásico. Obviously, the Clásico was really brilliant, very open, very intense. This was pretty classic Atletico Madrid kind of games, particularly in that first half. In the second half, Atletico Madrid tried to do what they do best, which is to score a goal and defend it for the rest of the game. But unfortunately, Athletic Bilbao were much better than that. And this was a game decided on details, really. 3 set pieces were the difference makers in these games. 3 corners, literally, were the difference makers in these games. And, unfortunately for Atletico Madrid, they conceded more goals than Athletic Club did, and they conceded on corners than Athletic Club did. So they lost that game, obviously. I think Atletico Madrid now, this might be another hit in the armour, because those games, in these kind of games, are not exactly about a result, but they are about how you feel. And if you lose them, you'll feel bad for the rest of the season, probably, or for a couple of weeks at the very least. And this is going to be a momentum hitter for Atletico Madrid before, of course, a big stretch coming into the season, Champions League round of 16 and all of that. And they also continued the game with 10 men, or finished the game with 10 men, as Jose Maria Jimenez was sent off in the 94th minute. So congratulations for Athletic Club. They will face Real Madrid in the final. Hopefully it will be a better final than this semi-final for them, and hopefully it will be a great final for Athletic Club, who would want to win the Super Cup once again. With the past business out of the way, now let's kick things off, and properly, I would say, with some weekend preview. To go to the Premier League, obviously, to start. It is round 22 of the English top flight, as it is. It starts on Friday, of course, with Brighton Hove Albion versus Crystal Palace. On Saturday, it is a big game between City and Chelsea to kick things off. Burnley versus Leicester City in the afternoon. Newcastle versus Watford. Norwich versus Everton, and Wolverhampton versus Southampton. Aston Villa versus Man United on Saturday as well. And then you have, on Sunday, Liverpool Brentford, West Ham Leeds, and Tottenham Arsenal in the North London derby. Obviously, the two biggest games in focus are Manchester City versus Chelsea on Saturday and Tottenham versus Arsenal on Sunday. So we start with the City-Chelsea game. It definitely comes in, I think, at a crucial moment for both teams. Man City, with the recent COVID outbreak, how it's going to affect the players. Is it going to really mean that we're going to see some tired players on the pitch? We don't know. But also in terms of league form, it really comes at a time when City are in a very, very ascending curve with 11 victories on the bounce. They definitely on the roll. They look close to the title as ever. They would love to settle the deal and settle the title already now, because they know how important this thing could be for them. Chelsea, on the other hand, they had a drop in form towards the latter end of the year, towards the Christmas period and the start of the new year. They had some tough results. I'm not going to say terrible, but tough results. Obviously, the performances were the ones that being questionable as well. The recent results for them against Spurs, I think, might be a momentum booster for Chelsea as far as I'm concerned. And also, the game itself is a big stakes in that game, because it is probably the last chance for Chelsea at a title race this season. I genuinely think if Chelsea do not get a result out of this one, if they don't win necessarily, they will be in a very, very tough position. Although I don't really believe that they have the strongest of chances to win this game against City. I mean, they're really in a good form, Man City, at the moment. It seems that COVID didn't affect the squad. We saw them play against Swindon Town in the FA Cup the other time, and it was, pretty normal for them to play in a certain way. I mean, they fielded a pretty strong squad and a pretty strong 11. To boot, yes, they had the players absent, but they still fielded a strong squad. They still played a really good game, and they still won 4-1 pretty comfortably, so there was no problem in that. Chelsea, they had a couple of good performances, I think, to turn things around. I mean, against Spurs, against Chesterfield, and against Tottenham again in the FL Cup. It was, they needed those kind of three back-to-back wins. After the momentum was, I'm not going to say crushed, but it was derailed a bit with some serious, points being lost in the Premier League almost unnecessarily. They drawn at home to Everton, they drawn it away to Wolverhampton, they drawn to Brighton and Hove Albion at home, and they drawn to Liverpool at home. This is already like 6 points dropped at home, almost unnecessarily, I would say, for Chelsea. Maybe the Liverpool ones, it's fine because it's Liverpool, but I think in Everton case, in Brighton, in the draw against Wolves away, definitely those are kind of momentum crushers for Chelsea. They took so much away from them behind City at the table, although they're second, which is a good position, I think, for them to have, but I think it's a real kicker if they beat Manchester City, 10 points behind City at the moment, and they played all of their games, so they can't really have an excuse of, we didn't play games because of COVID. So, we should see a good game. We should see a great and probably open, I think, game. City would love those. Chelsea have more of the incentive, obviously, to win this one, and definitely look like the side in dire need, I would say, of a win in that regard. The second biggest game, of course, of the week, and one of the biggest in the season overall, is the North London derby, Tottenham versus Arsenal. It's the kind of game that really look like it is a contrasting form, I think. Not necessarily a form, but I think performances from both sides. You look at Spurs, they improved under Conte in some ways. They started becoming more and more solid defensively, conceding less goals, winning games, being more lethal on the counter. And Arsenal, who generally are better since just about probably the start of the season, since early September, I would say, they started becoming better. Obviously, the game against Man City as of late for them is probably going to be the benchmark, I would say, for their performances, of how they will play their games. They would look at that game against Man City and say, yeah, we can be this good against Man City, so it can be this good against anyone. Obviously, they defeated them in the first fixture between them 3-0 at the Emirates, so definitely, or 3-1 should I say, at the Emirates, so definitely this will be another momentum booster for Arsenal. They have already the advantage over them, and generally, Arsenal kind of go 1-1 between them and Tottenham. They exchanging victories, although they had a bad spell, I think, as of late. Only one victory in 6 games for Arsenal against Spurs before the one they had in September 26. So generally, Arsenal go in this game, I think, with a good momentum. The result against Liverpool and the draw against Liverpool also will fill them with good positive vibes, kinda, to lead into this game against Spurs, which is, I think, a much easier opponent in comparison to Liverpool at Anfield. For Spurs, I think it's a necessity now to turn things around. The absence they have, Son missing, of course, long-term injury. A couple of results didn't go their way against Chelsea, although in general they had, I think, a better form under Conte than you would expect. Results the likes of Liverpool, beating West Ham in the Carabao Cup. I mean, beating teams like Crystal Palace and Watford are not easy targets, really, as easy as that sounds. But those kind of games were really, really tough. Although with some questionable performances in the middle, and Conte was questioning the quality of the players and the gap between him and Chelsea, between them and Chelsea. So this game is, I think, a must-win for both sides, particularly with them being so close on the table, 5th and 6th. They have the chance of the Arsenal, if they win, they have a chance to leap to 4th. Tottenham, if they win, they leap over Arsenal, they enter those European spots at 5th. But it's definitely going to be very interesting to see how this game is going to pan out with the contrasting form between the two sides. But the crucial part is, and the really crucial and the sure part is, that this is going to be a very, very good game as far as North London derbies are concerned, and hopefully it will live up to expectations. We roll on to Germany now, and the Bundesliga is round 19 of the German top flight this weekend, of course. After the return of it last week, some disappointing results for some teams, of course, good results for others, of course. In round 19 kicks off with Borussia Dortmund facing Freiburg. It's a tough game for Borussia Dortmund at home. Definitely comes in at the time, I think, where Borussia Dortmund are not in the best of patches, I would say, in the Bundesliga. Yes, they won against Frankfurt, and they made a great comeback against Frankfurt, but I think it's a big problem of theirs, conceding goals consistently, I would say, in the Bundesliga. I mean, they only kept one clean sheet in the last 8 games or so it's definitely a problem for them, and genuinely it will be very, very annoying against a side like Freiburg, who are not just 3rd on the table at the moment, 4th at the table, with 30 points, but also a side that scored 30 goals this season, which is a very decent return if you consider that Freiburg, this point last season, scored only 20. So definitely improved in the attack, definitely going to be a dangerous side, and with the sort of defensive mistakes that Dortmund tend to make, I really doubt that Freiburg would try and sit back and just wait for Dortmund to attack them. I don't think it will be the case. I think they will try and attack Dortmund, try to have a go at them, and maybe take advantage of their sort of always frail defense. I think that the way they don't cover really well, particularly on the flanks, with the right-hand side for the likes of Thomas Meunier, who plays there. So I think Freiburg might have a legit chance of taking the 3 points away from Dortmund, who need them, really, because they want to be as close to Bayern as possible. If they win today, of course, if they win on Friday, they will be 3 points behind Bayern Munich, who play on Saturday. That's why I mentioned the rest of the fixtures first. Köln host Bayern Munich on Saturday, Union Berlin versus Hoffenheim, Mainz versus VfL Bochum, Stuttgart versus Leipzig, Wolfsburg versus Hertha Berlin, Borussia Mönchengladbach versus Bayer Leverkusen, Augsburg, Frankfurt on Sunday, and Arminia Bielefeld face Greuther Fürth on Sunday as well. So, as I mentioned for Dortmund, if they win against Freiburg, they will be 3 points behind Bayern, who have a tough trip to Köln. But I think the good news for Bayern, at the very least, is the fact that the whole squad returned. The likes of Davis, Sane, Manuel Neuer, Lucas Hernandez are continuing to train with the team and individually in some capacity, of course, before resuming play. I think all of them will be available for this weekend fixtures against Köln after the first game against Mönchengladbach, which wasn't really good, obviously, with the whole of the absentees, although Bayern still fielded a pretty strong side. I suggest, the starting lineup was not exactly what you'd expect, but I think it was still a strong side for Bayern. It was still a side you'd expect to beat Borussia Mönchengladbach, but it didn't. And that might be a real momentum crusher for Bayern, kinda. Obviously, we'd expect the return of the full squad. We'll see how Bayern are going to be in proper mode after returning from the whole the COVID issues and the vacations that the players have been stranded on in some cases. So yeah, and I don't know, just to open some brackets really quickly, side notes. I don't know why people are really mad that Bayern gave a break for their players. I think they deserved it because over the course of the last 2 years, I think they didn't have it. 2020, we know how that was. 2021 also was a bit tough in terms of the scheduling because they needed to cram everything into one. Then there was the Euros. Then also you have I don't know how many international breaks now we had in 2021 as well. So you think they needed that break really, really, really strongly, and they deserved it. I think. I don't know what has been a point of debate ever at all in German media or elsewhere, because genuinely those players deserve the break, and they gave it all in the last 2 years. So they deserve a break. You need to make them happy, need to keep them happy. And of course, the big news as well is that Kingsley Coman finally renewed his contract with Bayern until 2027. So that's, I think, another big achievement, I think, for the board of Bayern, the new board, should we say, as Oliver Kahn is the new CEO. So it's definitely looking interesting for Bayern, and we'll see probably the real face of Bayern starting from this game against Köln with a full squad, and also against a side like Köln, who are 6th at the table at the moment. So it's not going to be an easy game at all, because in other seasons I would have said 3 points to Bayern, easy, but against a side like Köln this season, they're definitely, I think, prepped maybe even for European spot in the Conference League, which would be really decent to compensate, I think, for their season and for their and for the whole sort of performances that they put in this season under Stefan Baumgart. Of course, they're kind of good side. I've been watching them a lot because of Tunisian connection with Elias Khiri playing in there, but I think they are a good side overall. They are improving from last season, and they could be a real trouble for Bayern overall. The standings for the Bundesliga as it stands, it's Bayern, of course, 43 points, Dortmund 37, Hoffenheim 31 points, Freiburg with 30, 29 for Leverkusen, Köln 28, as well as Hertha Union Berlin, Frankfurt with 27 points, RB Leipzig 25, Mainz with 24, Bochum with 23, 22 for Gladbach, Hertha 21, Wolfsburg with 20, 18 for Stuttgart, 18 for Augsburg at 16th, Bielefeld at 17th with 70 points, and Greuther Fürth definite relegation with 6 points at the bottom. Since most of the Spanish top flight is going to be played on midweek, we decided to skip that part. We're not going to preview it. Of course, we'll leave that to the Monday podcast. Hopefully, we'll do that. And we're going to go to Italy. It is Serie A, of course, and it is round 21 of Italian top flight this weekend. Of course, after some action in the midweek Coppa Italia, there was also some Super Cup, but we're looking forward to round 22 of Serie A this weekend. It has some really juicy fixtures, I would say, for some teams. Of course, the whole fixture list altogether: Sampdoria start against Torino on Saturday, Salernitana play Lazio, Juventus face Udinese on Sunday, the Sassuolo Hellas Verona, Venezia face Empoli, Roma face Cagliari, Atalanta face Inter Milan, Bologna versus Napoli on Monday, and it is Milan Spezia on Monday as well, and Fiorentina Genoa. So it is a pretty well spared sort of fixture, of course, to compensate for teams who played in the midweek, who are Napoli, played in the Cup as well, Spezia or Milan played in the Cup as well, and they qualified against Genoa, Fiorentina, who played against Napoli and qualified 5-2 in a crazy game with red cards and all of that. Napoli coming back from 2-1 to 2 all inside 96 minutes, leading the game to extra time, but in the extra time they received an extra red card, so it became 9 versus 10. At that point it was impossible for Napoli to defend, and they conceded 3 other goals to lose 5-2 against Napoli. Obviously the juiciest of games, it looks like, in Serie A will be Atalanta versus Inter, and it is a big game for Atalanta, I think, because Atalanta have always been hovering around the top spots and definitely been close to the top 4 of the table. They're in the top 4 of the table. They're close to the title race, but they've been just, I think almost, but not quite. That's the expression. They've been almost close, but not quite. They are 8 points behind Inter Milan. Although they still have a game in hand. Also, Inter Milan have a game in hand because Inter didn't play against Bologna last Thursday before the game that they had against Lazio. Now they had the Super Cup, of course. They won it against Juventus on Wednesday, and then you have Atalanta, who their record is not bad. but I think they lost some unnecessary points over the course of the season. They had some incredible victories. I mean, they defeated Napoli at home, at their home in the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium. They're really on a decent patch of form. In Serie A, I think they have some really good results. As of late, they lost only once out of the last 7. So genuinely, they would have, I think they have an opportunity to catch up to Inter Milan even better. They can get close to them. 5 points behind them would be much better with a game in hand. Also, that could be really important. But obviously, the task in hand isn't easy at all for Atalanta. Inter at the moment are so consistent when it comes to Serie A. They're so consistent at the moment. Are in such a good form that it's really impossible to just expect them to lose or drop points suddenly. They won all of their last 7 games, of course, and if they played Bologna, I would assume they would have won and made that 8. So definitely, it's a big test for Atalanta, I think, more than Inter Milan, for their resilience, for their sort of, for their good football. Can they be that offensive, that open as they usually, be against any opponents against Inter Milan? I don't think they can, because they're opening themselves up to so much. The likes of, Lautaro Martinez, Alexis Sanchez, who's really gaining some form at the moment at Inter Milan, gaining some game time, some crucial game time in Inter Milan. Also, you have, the likes of Edin Dzeko returning from COVID layoff would be really dangerous. You look at the likes of Joaquin Correa coming from the bench to support from the midfield, and Barella and Çalhanoğlu and all of that. So you reckon if Atalanta could keep themselves, maybe a draw would be decent for Atalanta enough, I would say. They would take it, I think, before the game, considering the form that Inter are in, but obviously they'd be looking to win because they know that they can, and they are in a position now in terms of Italian football and their position and their standard in Italian football to expect them to defeat Inter Milan, and it will not be a surprise anyway. So it will be a tough test for both sides, for Simone Inzaghi, who just came up from a Super Cup. I think an exhausting game, I would say, against Juventus, although not necessarily because Inter Milan were tired, but because Juventus dragged them towards the 120 and extra time, so it will be pretty exhausting. We'll see how physically they will be against Atalanta, who played earlier than them, of course. Played on Tuesday in the Cup. They defeated Venezia to go through in the Coppa Italia, so it will definitely be interesting to see how both games will deal with each other physically, particularly Inter Milan, as I mentioned, who had a much tougher game in the Super Cup against Juventus than Atalanta did against Venezia in the Coppa, and obviously the stakes are big in this one. If Atalanta win, they go 5 points behind Inter Milan, and obviously with the game in hand, you don't know really what can happen in the Serie A, the race. Elsewhere, Juventus, a chance to continue their good momentum, their good form, leading into the new year against Udinese, although it won't be an easy game at all. Roma to face Cagliari, maybe to try and rebuild some of the momentum that lost. 9 losses already for them this season. 10 wins, 9 losses, it doesn't make up. I mean, if they'd drawn some of those games, they would be in a better position, I would say, than where they are now. Napoli face Bologna away after the embarrassment of the Cup. They are looking to rehabilitate themselves and try to rebuild their team again and the team spirit again after losing. Of course, they'll be missing players for suspension, obviously, so it will be really tough for them on Monday. Milan plays Spezia, and Milan, of course, will be looking to keep the pressure on Inter Milan as they go, of course, with the game in hand for Inter. Hopefully for them, they drop points in that game, and Milan will always be on their backs trying to chase them. So Lazio plays Salernitana away from home, a game that is going to be not easy, considering looking at Lazio's form so far. It's definitely not going to be an easy game to play for Maurizio Sarri's boys. Overall, it's still pretty exciting games in Serie A. Obviously, Atalanta versus Inter is going to be the game to watch on Sunday night at the Atleti Azzurri in Bergamo, and definitely will be a game that we'll be keeping an eye on here. That's it for this episode. I was with HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version, subscribe to the YouTube channel, of course, enable notifications to receive all the updates from this episode and other episodes. Definitely follow us on social media. The usernames are on the screen and the links in the description, and listen to us on every podcast listening platform. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening. I was your host, HOD of the PSP, and I'll be seeing you soon.